So Ed Markey has defeated Joe Kennedy for his Massachusetts Senate seat. Now, this was a really interesting race all along. Joe Kennedy, now he was a congressman, or is a congressman, but he ran for Senate. Now he lost running for the Senate, so now he's got no seat. But Joe Kennedy jumped in the race to challenge Ed Markey. And the initial polls had Joe Kennedy over 10 points up on Ed Markey. Now, why is that? Oh, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, his last name is Kennedy. He's part of a political dynasty. We're talking about Massachusetts. So it's, it was almost like kind of unsurprising, even though he's not the incumbent. It's like he immediately became the incumbent because that name Kennedy carries a lot of weight now, doesn't it? So it was a long race, a difficult race. What happened with Ed Markey is absolutely fascinating. He did what is effectively the ultimate face turn. His voting record is really not great. I mean, we have to keep it real about what his past is like. So he actually voted for the Iraq War. He voted for NAFTA. He voted for the Patriot Act. He voted for the crime bill. So this is a guy who has a record that, I would slam. I would rip apart. I think that's abysmal. But what happened is, relatively recently, he's kind of gone hardcore in the other direction. He's kind of like fully embraced the idea that his past voting record was terrible, and it's almost like he's trying to make up for that. By the way, just so you know, we all like Ro Khanna. There was a time when Ro Khanna had like a very centrist voting record, and he was kind of proudly repping that brand. And then at some point, he had like an enlightenment moment, and he really went big time in the other direction. Well, now Ed Markey, he's most known for in recent years aggressively pushing for the Green New Deal and signing on to Medicare for All and pushing for that. He's really aligned himself with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in a way that no political advisors in Washington, D.C. would have ever, said to do. So, you can determine on your own whether or not you think Ed Markey's face turn is purely strategic and he's BSing, or if he really means it. But without a doubt, there was a face turn. And in the case of Kennedy, I mean, listen, he wasn't around back when the Iraq War vote happened, but my guess is this guy not only would have made all the terrible votes that Ed Markey made in the past, but he also currently doesn't support the Green New Deal or Medicare for All. So, I mean, listen, of the two options, which one was better? I mean, there's no doubt that Ed Markey was better. So Ed Markey won. He kind of won by a large margin. And, front and center was the idea that he's for the Green New Deal. He's for Medicare for All. He ran an ad recently which went viral, which was him flipping the famous JFK quote around, which is, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. He flipped that and said, it's time to start asking what your country can do for you. Which is exactly right. I mean, you pay taxes. You're not paying taxes so that the government can take your money and go do a bunch of corrupt, terrible stuff. I mean, in theory, you're paying taxes so the government can, take care of the basics for you. Do the basics. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, so on and so forth. So, I agree with what he did flipping that quote. And honestly, now, Ed Markey owes the left a debt of gratitude because it was the left that really got him elected here. Sunrise Movement was pushing the hardest for him. Because, again, his new thing is he's all in on the Green New Deal, and he's really, pushing hard for it. So that result was good. Listen, there were other results that were not good last night, like, for example, or the other night, I should say. Like, for example, Alex Morse losing. Alex Morse was up against a homophobic smear campaign from Richard Neal. Richard Neal is, according to some metrics, literally the worst corporate Democrat in Congress. This is a guy who blocked a bill which would have banned surprise medical billing. That's what he did. He's the number one recipient of corporate PAC money. He's as bad as it gets. And they ran a homophobic smear campaign that's now been uncovered as an actual smear campaign. And what happened was Intercept had great reporting on this. Ryan Grimm's done a great job on this. But what happened was, as the record was being corrected and as, groups were apologizing to Alex Morse for falling for the smear campaign, local news did not correct the record. So even though national news and The Intercept and online people understood this was a smear campaign, local news, which is pretty, prominent and powerful and impacts congressional races, they did not correct the record. And so Richard Neal is, he's as bad as it gets, man. No morals, no ethics, will go as dirty as possible in order to win. And I feel very bad for Alex Morse, but, Morse deserves better than this. And, we thank him for running the campaign that he ran. He was a Justice Democrat. And if he runs again, eventually he will win. It may sting right now, it may hurt right now, but eventually he will win for sure. Now, who knows what Joe Kennedy's going to do? He is, by the way, as vapid as it gets. He is like the quintessential fail son. He's the quintessential, third generation, fourth generation dynasty airhead. Because, and I tweeted this the other day, I think it's like a law of nature that the deeper you go in a political dynasty, the more vapid the people become. And, what does he believe? Nobody knows what he believes. The funniest tweet this election season from Joe Kennedy was when he said, nobody should have to face medical bankruptcy in a pandemic without a lawyer by their side. No, the thing you need to say is nobody should face medical bankruptcy. That's it. There should be no such thing as medical bankruptcies. That's it. That's the end of it. Just say that. That's all you got to say. Nope, he kept going without a lawyer by their side. Again, it's beyond comical. He's a platitude machine. He's a cliche machine. And so Ed Markey, apart from the Green New Deal and apart from Medicare for All, he also put front and center that some of his accomplishments. For example, affordable internet to schools and libraries, big thing he pushed for. Raising fuel economy standards for cars and trucks, big thing he pushed for. Raising billions of dollars for Alzheimer's research, and deterring robocalls. Robocalls, I mean, this was I'm sure you guys get them. Didn't used to get them in the past. Now I feel like they're making a comeback. He said that he's basically been kind of leading a political revolution since the 1980s. This was the argument he made. He was kind of making a Bernie-esque argument. He introduced the nuclear freeze resolution, and he was part of this gathering where a bunch of people went to Central Park in New York to demand an end to the nuclear arms race. Again, this is going back now. He's been in power for quite a long time. So why is this a victory? Why is this actually a big win despite his checkered past? Well, let me show you this tweet from Alex Thompson of Politico, because this really explains it well. Remember, this is Politico. This is as establishment as it gets. He said the following: Markey could be a model for Dem incumbents in blue states and districts wary of 2022 primary challenges. Publicly support Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, and build a policy partnership with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. See that right there? That means we are now effectively doing what the Tea Party did, which made them successful. See, the Tea Party didn't take over the entire Republican Party. They had a little Tea Party caucus, but what happened was all the other Republicans became terrified that they were going to get primaried by a Tea Partier and that they were going to lose. So what did it do? It pushed the Republicans further right. It pushed the establishment Republicans to go, okay, what are we going to do? We got to concede more. We got to go more in their direction because they keep winning these primaries. This is the exact same thing now on the left. This is what Justice Democrats has done. This is what DSA has done. This is what Sunrise Movement has done. This is what all these groups have done. They've now made it conventional wisdom in Washington, D.C. that, hey, if you're an establishment Democrat and you don't want to lose, you got to go left. You got to bend the knee to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You got to form a policy partnership with her. You got to pick a handful of issues that you can argue, hey, I'm actually a lefty here. And if you don't publicly support Medicare for all, if you don't publicly support a Green New Deal, we're coming for you. And there's a decent chance you're going to lose. Because now it's a number of corporate Democrats who've been taken out. They have their wins too, of course, and they also have all the institutional backing and the money. But now we're starting to make it become conventional wisdom. Now even Politico and the establishment are going, oh boy, at the very least we have to gesture in that direction or we're toast. That's right, especially since, by the way, we're in a pandemic. Tens of millions of people are losing their health insurance. Do you not understand that? Now's the time to support Medicare for all. There's never been a better time. We need it desperately. Not just from a policy perspective, but now from a strategic perspective, people are starting to realize it. Democrats are starting to realize it. So now we're doing what the Tea Party did. We're dragging them to our position. We're making them bend to our will by having some prominent victories. By the way, listen, I can't stress this enough. Beto O'Rourke came out of the woodwork to endorse Joe Kennedy. By the way, pathetic. They're basically the same person. They believe in nothing. They're totally vapid, empty shells of people. Boring-ass white dudes. But Nancy Pelosi, who does this whole tap dance of like, primaries are a bad thing. We need to support incumbents. What does she do? She supports a primary against an incumbent because the person primarying the incumbent is more corporate. So now, okay, you want to play this game? All bets are off. Now and I've been telling the left this for the longest time. You cannot play nice with them. They don't like you. They'll stab you in the back immediately. You're not going to out political maneuver Nancy Pelosi from inside. The way you win is flexing. The way you win is the outside-inside game. The way you win is by taking the people who are on your side and leveraging them. You can make life a living hell for Democratic leadership. Why? Because you got people who actually follow you and believe in what you say. You could flood their office with phone calls at any given time to try to force them to do your bidding. And if they cross you, call it out again. Call it out again. You have to use the power of the people. You have to do it. That's all you have. So now all bets are off. And now every lefty politician should endorse other lefty politicians and not, bite your tongue because I might step on the toes of Democratic leadership. They're letting you know they don't like you. They'll endorse against you. It's asymmetrical warfare. You have to fight back. You have to use every advantage that you can get. And now, again, we're seeing if Pelosi comes out, endorses Kennedy, gets embarrassed, as she did, well, now you know you're up against a group of people and an ideology and a movement that can win. So there's there are symbolic victories here. And there's a sea change going on. And, we need to recognize that and use every advantage we can get. So this was good. Obviously, the Morse result wasn't great. There were some other, results as well throughout all of Massachusetts. But if Morse runs again at some point, he's going to win. And we got a big W on the board here. So let's keep fighting moving forward because we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. But clearly there's hope. And clearly they're getting scared.